Abuses by the National Security Agency, it was revealed by a whistleblower a couple of years ago, and this led to a lawsuit by the Electronic Frontier Foundation, that the NSA actually installed a fiber optic splitter in San Francisco that diverted all email, web traffic, and basically web browsing information from AT&T customers to the National Security Agency. Anyone here have an iPhone? Somebody in Washington knows what you've been doing. One expert said this is so massive and so egregious that it's not just a wiretap, it's a country tap. Now, the NSA is not supposed to spy on American citizens. Its brief does not allow for the surveillance of American citizens. However, they get around this very cleverly by inviting liaisons from our colleagues in the UK to come over and sit in at our listening stations. And when an NSA officer wants to spy or find out something about an American citizen, they hand the intercept information to the Brit, who then calls up all the pertinent information while the NSA officer looks over his shoulder. Thus can claim, we didn't do it. And to return the favor, we do the same thing for the Brits at their listening station at Menwith Hill. So, the argument can be made, and is made by some, that as long as all of this data is for the purpose of preserving national security, it's okay. This is all to protect us, is it not? Let's look at one historical example of where this was abused. In the 1930s, some wealthy Americans found it to their advantage to invest in Germany. American law at the time did not allow for the creation of monopolies, but it was very vague as to what we could do when investing overseas. Now, it wasn't necessarily that Standard Oil really supported the policies of the Nazis, but they were after a profit, and from a business perspective, fascism is a very efficient form of government. These transactions were facilitated by a very well-connected Washington law firm called Sullivan and Cromwell. Among the attorneys there were brothers Allen Dulles and John Foster Dulles. This isn't in the notes, I'm winging it here. After World War II, the connection of some very well-known American families like Rockefeller and Bush would have been highly embarrassing because the opinion of the American public toward Adolf Hitler had changed significantly between 1935 and 1945. Allen Dulles had been posted to Geneva, Switzerland as an officer of the OSS, the precursor to the CIA. He smuggled a lot of German men and money out of the country to places like Australia, Argentina, other points in the West. And then later, using his growing influence within the United States government, he was Eisenhower's CIA director. He created a corporation to help repatriate that money to Germany. So the identities and the fortunes of his clients, Rockefeller, Bush, et al., were protected. Now, the Russians figured out pretty quickly that they could infiltrate Western intelligence by putting out agents who pretended to be Nazis who wanted to escape to the West. This infiltration was so effective that Walter Bedell Smith, who preceded Allen Dulles as the director of Central Intelligence, later told the National War College that during the Cold War, the CIA lost about 97% of the agents that we recruited or posted behind the Iron Curtain. 97% liquidated. Now, how do you think that affected American security during the Cold War? But the Rockefellers got their money back. Flash forward to 2007, intelligence expert R.J. Hillhouse, Dr. Hillhouse, was on a government website and found a PowerPoint presentation that detailed military and intelligence appropriations for the coming year. This was not supposed to have been posted to a public website. She recognized this very quickly, so she very quickly downloaded it and saved it. And then reverse engineered the budget numbers and found that 70% of the intelligence appropriations budget of the United States is being paid to private contractors. 70%. Now, do you think that some of those entities whose primary responsibility is to return a profit to its investors might have a motive to maybe not fabricate something, but at least shade the information or the conclusions just a little bit? How do you think that affects American security? And we, you and I, are feeding the information, the grist for this mill. But it's not just the NSA. Of course, the FBI is also busy collecting data to protect us. FBI Director Robert Mueller has been pushing since 2006 to require internet service providers to keep logs of what websites you and I visit for up to 2 years. And in July of this year, the Obama administration is now proposing, or has proposed, to expand the range of data that ISPs must keep on file for requests from the FBI and local law enforcement. In other words, they're essentially telling AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, Earthlink, you need to spy on your customers for us and make that information available to us at any time. Now, the FBI, and by the way, to do this without a court order, the FBI can already obtain this information without a court order or a warrant by using a device called the National Security Letter. The information they need only needs to be relevant to an investigation. It means anyone even remotely connected to a subject of interest can find browser history, location data, and so forth pulled without a warrant. Not only that, the National Security Letter requires that the ISP or telecommunications company keep the request for information secret. AT&T can turn over your GPS data of where you've been making phone calls for the previous 2 years or what have you, but they can't tell you that they've turned that information over to the government. The FBI has also used something called an exigent letter. This is when they go to, say, AT&T and say, we need everything you've got on Derek Gilbert. We need it now. It's time sensitive. We promise the warrant is on the way. And this can be signed by an officer who's not authorized to sign the National Security Letter. But in 2007, FBI Director Mueller admitted that, well, okay, in about 700 cases, there was no real emergency, and the authorization for the information, the warrant, never appeared. Now, Director Mueller assures us that as of 2007, this is no longer being done. The change, by the way, proposed by the Obama administration, as I said, now requires, or would require, if Congress agrees, to broaden the scope of the information beyond just browser history to email information and so forth. Again, made available to law enforcement without a warrant. In other words, the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, which requires law enforcement to specify to a judge what they're looking for and why they're looking for it in your stuff, does not apply. But the key point of this discussion, I think, is that most of the information that we are providing to the FBI, the NSA, and other counterterror and intelligence offices is being willingly provided. We are giving this up willingly. In fact, the electronic devices, many of which I see in operation at this very moment, are spying on us